We are just so delighted that we can welcome to campus Kim Koopersmith, who is noted in the recent list of the Lawyers Hot 100.
My kids both said, enjoy this because it'll never happen again. So
No, it's really great. Another phrase that I can use in describing her is she's the chairperson of an A-list firm, one of the top firms in the world. Akin Gump, which is how I always knew it, it's also Akin Gump, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld, is a law firm with over 800 attorneys and advisors across the United States, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. The firm has 22 offices. It really has been one of the leading firms, not only because of the quality of its work, but because, frankly, they've had a transformative leader. As the chair of this firm, Ms. Koopersmith is literally described as pioneering and transformative in several areas. One, very specifically, is diversity. The Yale Law Women named Akin Gump one of the top 10 family-friendly firms. The Minority Corporate Counsel Association presented Akin Gump with an award in recognizing its commitment to diversity. And the activities that range from innovation and flexible hours, the pipeline work, the scholarship work, it really has set a standard for the profession. And in addition, the firm is so well known for its work in mergers and acquisitions and capital markets and restructuring, which of course have been somewhat in demand in recent years. But it also has an extraordinary range of areas of expertise: aerospace and defense, climate change, communications and telecom, energy, entertainment, and American Indian law, commercial litigation, which is one of your own areas, food and drug law, class action law, healthcare law. Kim, I'm going to stop saying things so that we can actually get into a conversation, but I just have to note, I just admire your own commitment being on the board of the Equal Justice Works, helping law students and recent graduates pursue public service work, your work on Her Justice, assisting domestic violence survivors, and your own outstanding work in class action litigation, which I teach, so that's outstanding. Would you tell us a little bit about your pathway? You said you were surprised before your current job, you were managing partner of the U.S. practice, and you were surprised by that, and you even said in one interview you were surprised to be at a law firm. So Tell us.
Yeah, so I graduated in 1984. I went to law school because I had a deep commitment to doing public interest work. And if you had asked me to bet $1 million when I graduated from my undergraduate education, what I would be doing, I would have bet $1 million that I would have been at a public interest organization. You may say, this does not seem like you fulfilled your goal. And the truth is, I was co-opted in some respects, as many of you and others have been over the years, to feel like I ought to start out at a firm and get a grounding and training, and then I can always decide what my path will be. Somewhat to my surprise, I actually really loved the work that I was doing. I combined it with quite a bit of pro bono and public interest work when I was a younger lawyer, and actually felt like it fit very well with my goals. I enjoyed it, and I think the next thing I knew, I had been practicing for 10 plus years, had 2 daughters, and the path felt pretty right for me. I came over to Akin Gump after 10 years and ended up in a variety of management roles. And I guess in some ways the thing that turns out to be most surprising to me is I am probably the only person running a law firm who came out of management roles that were clearly focused on professional development, diversity, inclusiveness, retention, gender issues. And I give my firm a lot of credit for originally giving me a seat at the table on those issues, and then allowing me to rise within the organization and ultimately be on the executive committee of the firm with that as the areas of responsibility. So it was a bit of that's why I feel like it's always been a little bit of a surprise that this is where I am, both in terms of what I thought I would be doing when I graduated law school, and also just within my firm. But it has felt a very comfortable path, and these are issues I have cared a lot about since I was in law school. even before law school. So it's been great to be able to keep that commitment and end up in a position of some authority. Running a law firm does not give you as much authority as you would think, but enough to shape some of the agenda.
And you have done so. Let's talk about the nature of private practice today. Some people say this is a terrifying time, the sky is falling. Other people say there's been no better time than to practice law, particularly the trans-border opportunities. What's your view of the opportunities, the challenges?
Okay, so I am by nature a glass half empty person, but I actually think in terms of coming out of law school, I think this is actually a great time to come out of law school. The world is changing, and there's lots to create a sense of anxiety, no doubt about that. But I think if you're balancing the degree to which there is opportunity arising out of the changing environment we're in versus a sense of doom, I would go with a lot of opportunity. And I guess I was thinking about, as I was coming up here this morning, why I do feel optimistic. I think what it is you are all coming out at a very dynamic time. So I look at where what we were focused on as a law firm, what I was focused on when I was practicing not that long ago, and where the growth is now. There's just a huge amount of opportunities, whether it is, I mean, we had an international trade practice in Washington. It was a great practice. In the last 4 years, between sanctions, export control, FCPA, I mean, that practice has probably tripled in size. You look at cybersecurity issues, obviously something that you're reading about every day. We're focused on that and getting traction, combining what we do on the policy side, the corporate side, the litigation and investigation side, threat assessments. I mean, there's just a really long list of ways in which law is actually meeting the challenges that are out there in a pretty unique way that if you graduate from a very good law school, which obviously everybody here is going to have that as the starting point, there's a ton of opportunity, and I think it's going to be very exciting. I think there's just a lot that all of you are going to find yourselves doing that are kind of early thoughts now, but you're going to be able to take what you have learned here in some pretty incredibly exciting directions. So I'm a glass half empty person, but not on this subject.
That's fascinating. What about the clients who say, we just won't bill for the time of junior associates? And I get it all the time. Why aren't you training practice-ready attorneys? And what do you say?
I don't see that either. I think I would not describe this as a myth, because it is, in fact, an issue. There is a very clear focus by large corporate clients on who is billing and what their qualifications are. However, we need young lawyers. We need junior lawyers who have come out of law school, are very smart, and can tackle difficult issues. There is not a substitute for really good thinking, legal research, analysis of the issues. We actually, I can tell you, we did a study of our own just in terms of utilization of associates to see if it bore out this reality that first and second years are not as in demand and that our large clients aren't using them. That was not the case. Our first and second years are very, very well utilized, very few gaps in anyone's opportunity, which is what we were really focused on. So I think there is plenty of work that everyone at all of our clients recognizes has to be done by people who are giving this good thought. I think there is definitely a change, and it's probably to all of your benefit, actually, from when the routine work that used to be done by first and second years, that is no longer being done by you, but you should actually be holding a parade for that particular development in the law. That is all being, other than very, very few firms, that work is all being either outsourced or done in some other model within the law firm. And so in that respect, I think it's true. Large corporate clients are not paying for you all to review documents. But do we need people to figure out how these statutes intersect and what we want to argue and what the issues are that the client presents as it relates to those? We absolutely do. So I'm thinking that that's overstated. There is definitely a change in the dynamic. When I was At your stage, the law firms completely were driving the bus. It was, we'll tell you who's working on it, we'll tell you how many hours it's going to be, we'll tell you how much we're going to charge for it, we'll decide on the team. That is different. But it's not that people are saying this can all be done, just present us with fully rounded fourth-year associates who have been practicing before you have anybody assigned to our cases.
So I'm very struck that you used the word thinking several times, that young attorneys are needed for their thinking.
Yes.
And I couldn't agree more that actually that means that the job is more interesting than it may have once been. But what about the claim that 24/7 demands, that the lifestyle is just unsustainable?
Okay, I'm less optimistic about what I can say on this subject.
All right.
And
That means that we know you're being candid.
Mostly because I should say that I have 3 vantage points on this. One is I run a law firm. The other is that I chair Equal Justice Works and have a huge commitment to this area. But the third is I am the mother of a third-year associate, not at my firm, at another large, very successful firm in New York. So I keep looking at my own charges, meaning the people that I feel responsible for at Aiken Gump, the people that I want to feel are having a great opportunity to learn and develop. But I also, look at how many times my daughter does not come to dinner on Sunday nights when my in-laws come over. Not that I'm bitter, but putting that aside, this is tough. I think there's some good aspects to it, which is you do not have to be in the office to do all of this work that when I was a young lawyer, you needed to be in the office doing. I think much more flexibility, much more of kind of doing this on your own terms, which I think is a very big improvement. But for all of us, I mean, you have this now just in your own lives. It does not turn off the way that it used to. So I can't even believe this, but the fax machine was invented in my time as an associate. Before that, you had to wait overnight to get a document back. I know I sound like those people saying I walked 10 miles, but the pace has changed so dramatically that it's hard to not have this infringe on your life. I think we do a pretty good job, and when you look at the hours and you look at associate satisfaction, I think we're making people feel like it's important that they have some balance in their lives. I know my opening speech to our starting attorneys every year is, people have now called it the Call Your Mother speech, because you need to have a balance in your life. If you exercise, you need to keep exercising. You need to make sure your siblings know that you are still one of their siblings. Life needs to still matter. If you're going to be a good lawyer and you have cut off everything else in your life and you're never going out and you're never making time for yourself, you will not do this as well. So I am a huge believer and have done what I can to make sure that that message is out there, but this is a demanding job. It's an intellectually challenging and demanding job. I think that's its appeal, but it does mean you kind of have to create some semblance of how you want to go forward so that it is both enjoyable and challenging.
Well, I'm old enough that I remember the FedEx. You
Me
send
too.
FedEx,
Yes.
you have 3 days before you hear from the client. It's just hard to even try to convey that as a possibility. But you're quite right. This is a transformation of everybody's life. You can go shopping at any time. You can, check your bank account. You can, buy a funeral plot, whatever, in the middle of the night. So one of the things that you have done is you've really demonstrated it's possible to be a partner part-time. It's possible to have flexible hours. Can you say something about that?
I feel I was very fortunate. So I had, first of all, for whatever reason it is, I married my high school sweetheart, so that either put me in good or bad position, but I therefore had my first child when I was very young. In case this is recorded, it was a wonderful thing that I did. And whatever, I should know this too, 30 some odd years later, it's all good. So I had my first daughter when I was a third-year associate, and then my second daughter about 5.5 years later. I did not know how I would feel on the subject of whether I was going to want to continue to work full-time or not. I thought I would want to work full-time. it actually turned out that I really liked the little creature. And I ended up carving out a 4-day-a-week schedule, which continued on a kind of flexible basis, meaning that as they got older, meaning they were in nursery school or kindergarten, I would sneak in a few hours on Friday. But I kept for quite a number of years to a schedule that really did have what my kids referred to, sadly, as mommy play day. So we would make sure that we had carved out that time. And I mean, it is, as your responsibilities increase, it gets a little bit trickier to be able to continue doing that. But my firm was respectful of it. I was very willing to kind of be flexible myself in making sure that I was continuing to get opportunities so that I wasn't kind of falling particularly behind. By the time my kids were both in school for most of the day, I was working on a great case that was just a very full-time commitment. I was fully engaged and inched my way back to full-time, but I probably had 6+ years that I was not working full-time, and I was fortunate that the firm was prepared to allow me to try this out. I came over to the firm to Aiken Gump working 4 days a week, and I think I was a completely new phenomenon.
It happened before.
Right. They did not, I came with the real person that they wanted. I was kind of the person that came with the person they wanted, and they're like, whatever. But then it actually turned out pretty successfully. They ultimately asked me, this seems to work, could you draft a reduced workload policy? Because this seems, we inadvertently seem to have come up with a system that works, at least for you. So that was actually the start of how we did that.
I just love this story. I love this story. I mean, you lived your life and then you changed the institution, and it's become a model. It's become a model for other institutions.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. Let's go back to those clients. Some of them are insisting on, as you say, their own rates. Some of them are micromanaging the team.
Correct.
Some of them are demanding discounts. How do you deal with this as the top dog, and also what do you forecast going forward?
I think there was kind of a moment in the last, since the Great Recession, where law firms had to take a deep breath and figure out who they are and what their relationship is with their clients. And what I mean by a deep breath is, your immediate reaction was, we need to fight back against this. That's how I think most law firms frame this. I felt pretty early on that this was a circumstance where you were either going to join them and embrace that the world needed to look different and offer up that you were prepared to partner with them on the issues that mattered to them, or you were going to be in a small group of firms that was going to resist this. And it's not to say, I think there are some firms that actually are in a position to say, if you want to use us, it will be on our terms, but it is a very, very small group, and even for those firms, it is not with the same degree of ability to dictate all of the terms as I think there once was. So I was an early believer in, we need to understand and hear what the clients are saying. I think we will be better long term in our ability to succeed with them if they don't feel like we're the opposition. And so you work with them. I mean, they ultimately, you have to do this together because they don't want you to not make their work a priority. They want the A-team on their work. They want to feel like people are repeating their involvement with them so that we have a group of associates, partners who all know the business of that particular client. I mean, they have incentives just like we do to have this be a successful partnership. And I think if you recognize they're under enormous pricing pressure, they are not a revenue generator, so they have their own constraints.
This is the general counsel.
Yeah, the general counsel in large companies are reporting to other people, and you have to recognize the pressure that they're under as well. On the other hand, if we're doing the work, you can't say, we want this on a capped fee basis, meaning you are going to complete this transaction for $250,000. If they want you to do that, but then they want you to fly to 7 continents to do the due diligence in person, that's not going to be a sustainable model. And I think everybody has moved towards the appropriate level of recognizing there's reason for clients to create more of a structure around the work that you're doing and to hold you more accountable. And there's reasons for law firms to say, we are willing to work within that, but you have to understand we need to have people feel like they know what your objectives are. We need clarity about what your goals are in the litigation or in the deal. And I think that that's happening. It's a little, there's some grinding of the gears in this, but I think it's moving in a better direction.
It's so fascinating. The billable hour structure started the last time there was a big economic downturn. Yeah. So started after the crash of '29, when law firms that before that time just gave a bill that just had a bottom line number. Yeah. And the firm said, hey, we need a little more transparency, what's going on here. So then the billable hour started. Is there an alternative to the billable hour? You talk about the flat fee. I don't know how you do that in litigation or a transaction, because there are always new problems and new wrinkles.
There's more that could be done on that. I was a skeptic, but I'm starting to see. There's enough. You guys have all taken statistics and other courses. You can build a body of work that says we have done 150 yes. deals of this size that are either multinational or not multinational, and do some analytics and say, generally speaking, barring some catastrophe, sure. this should cost $250,000. So there's a lot that law firms are doing to build those kind of databases. Yep. How much does it cost to prepare for a deposition? In a class action, prior to summary judgment, what are the steps that are likely to be taken? How many depositions will you need? What will be involved in doing all of that? And then our job is to stick to it.
Sure.
So a lot of technology involved in this, ways in which you're going to budget, measure against the budget, project manage. All these things that I don't know how much of that is going on here, but those are
in my office we're doing that.
Okay. There's room for sticking within
yes.
Some level of cap fee or some kind of arrangement that has some portion of it with a general understanding of what something's going to cost. But that also requires that you and the client have a good relationship, so that if it does go off in a different direction, no one is saying, ha ha, because right. that's never, that's not a good place to be.
It's a communication.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned relationship, because one of the worries I have is that in the current world, with beauty contests and competition, oftentimes pieces of the work are sliced out and given to many different firms, and then you don't have the overview or the trusted long-term relationship anymore. And that does diminish the capacity to be an advisor and be a trusted advisor. And I wonder, how do you approach that? How do you navigate that?
And to me, that's an area where I feel my own sense of responsibility to communicate to my partners that because of the disaggregation, the whole sense that there isn't necessarily the same ability to just assign someone on day one to this case and know that just in their experience on this case or this deal, they're going to know everything there is to know, that you really have to work at keeping people in the loop. Yeah. That also goes back to one of your earlier questions. This is a true, clients have an issue with the time that law firms spend keeping everybody in the loop. To me, this is peculiar. I think that they should want to have the team in the loop, but they actually view that as like the cost of paper. That's your responsibility as a law firm to make sure that everybody is in the loop. And if you want to come back from court and have a team meeting, that's actually part of your infrastructure, not part of our relationship.
Wow.
So that's been a change it's now literally in many companies outside counsel guidelines that conversations just among lawyers in the firm are not something. Wow. So you want to know about how it could be that people aren't kept informed? Yes. You have to make an affirmative effort. So with some of these things happening, I do feel like one of my messages in terms of professional development at the firm is we need to make the investment even though we may not be getting paid for it. Everybody needs to know what's going on. It's worth the time. It's worth, we'll do better work if the team all knows what's going on. And you have to make that happen because you don't have the same, you're not the apprentice that you once were, where you just sat in somebody's office and just kind of through osmosis got to know everything about the case.
So I'm going to ask 2 more questions and then open it up for questions from you all. One is, what does success look like today for an individual lawyer or for a law firm?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I would actually use the same term for both. I think differentiating is the word that comes to mind. So you are not all going to graduate and immediately know what that thing is, but I think that you will find yourselves migrating to something that you feel clicks with you. And when you have that feeling that this clicks, know everything that there is to know about it, feel completely immersed in it, figure out all the ways in which you can know more than other people know about it, what would make a client happy, what would be good for the law firm or the institution that you work with. And I think that is what is most likely to make individuals feel successful. And then just as a law firm, I think there's kind of 2 paths that law firms are going down. One is a more of a scale model, that it's going to be about being in the most number of places with competencies that can meet what the largest clients are looking for. The other is more of a differentiating strategy. We are not going to do everything everywhere. We're going to do a fair number of things in a significant number of places, and we're going to do it really, really well, but we're going to recognize that that means that there are things that we are not in the running for. And that's the path we've chosen, and I think having our lawyers, our practices, our management team all focused on how do we differentiate ourselves among law firms that understandably, other than that we start with A, which I always think is very helpful. I get when I do 2L, interviews, that this all does seem a little overwhelming in how you differentiate among the firms.
Yes. Well, that's related to my last question, which is, how would you describe your firm's culture and how do you affect culture?
I'm big on culture. So at our partner retreat last year, I had a whole section on culture, which I think people found interesting, because I think normally law firms think about culture as an unstated, amorphous concept that you just have to ensure that your firm has a good culture. I actually think culture is something that you need to talk about at all levels. You need to have it affirmatively on the table as part of what you care about as a law firm. So having it as a topic at the partner retreat, in addition to things like innovation and differentiation, culture matters. What does it mean that culture matters? Yeah. And how do you communicate it? So just a couple of things that when I first took on this role, the first year I completed, the firm did very well. And I was actually sitting on my daughter, the then first year associate's bed on December 31st, and was enjoying that nice feeling that I had started in this role and it had been a good year. And somewhat just intuitively, emotionally, I took out my then BlackBerry and typed out an email to all of the staff saying, the engine that makes this firm a success is all of you. So you enable all of us as lawyers to make our clients happy, which ensures our success and vitality as a law firm. And I think it's very important that all of you recognize your role in what we are as a law firm and our success. So I sent one of those to staff. I sent one to the associates at our firm and one to the partners. And the number of thank yous that I got were in the exact opposite. So the staff, I got so many emails saying, wow, this means so much to me. Wow. I've been here 20 years. Wow. It's so great to feel like somebody appreciates your role.
Part of something.
The associates were like, that's very nice of you. And 2 partners said anything back. So that tells you a little bit about that I have more work to do on culture. But it was a starting point for me in setting a different culture of inclusiveness, of acknowledgement of people's roles. This is not all about, just the person at the top. It's about everyone who contributes to the organization. And so I've tried to continue in that theme at all levels, even within the practices. How are we communicating what success is, how are we acknowledging what we want to do as a law firm, how do we treat each other, all being important parts of who we are as a law firm. And I think it actually has gotten traction. So
that's fantastic. So I'm going to open it up, and I'll even plant some questions. This is last comment is very much related to collaboration. How important is collaboration, teamwork? Is that something that can be taught? How do you evaluate it? Do people get feedback on it? Another is, why is diversity good for the firms? But come on, questions, comments? You want to
call on you.
Oh, sorry. You called on her, so go ahead. Yes.
So thank you very much for having us today. My name is Aizada and I'm from Kyrgyzstan. And I just wanted to tell everyone that in 2013, I think July, August, hacking gun was everywhere in the news in our country because your firm has offered its pro bono services to revive a criminal case against my ex-president's son, who was alleged of corruption and money laundering, security fraud. And as a regular citizen of my country, I just wanted to express my appreciation. I thought it was very nice because in my country, we didn't have that much money, of course, to hire any American law firm. And I was wondering, because after that, after resignation of general prosecutor and everything was happening in my country, we were not able to follow up what happened next, so we don't know on what stage the case is right now. And the second question that I have is just a general. I was wondering how often you represent countries, states, and how often do you offer your pro bono services to developing countries?
So, boy, I'll try and so I know exactly the case that you're talking about, and actually I think you did not even just have any lawyer. I think Patty Millett, who is now a Court of Appeals judge, was one of the leading lawyers on that case. So
a graduate, amazing person.
A graduate, yes. And I think someone who just judged your moot court.
It's very true, yes.
So, and just a fantastic person. So you definitely got the A team, and it was I think there were some connections at the firm to the issues in your country, and we have a very inclusive pro bono program. So we have a pro bono partner, and he views his role as being kind of responsive to what people in the firm are committed to and to developing the best opportunities based on what our lawyers think would be a good project. And so that was one of I think it was our biggest pro bono project that year. But we are a huge believer in doing pro bono work. We have done work in several, developing constitutions, doing other kinds of work for countries. I would say the majority of the work is for individuals or other causes, but we are now, this year, when I met with Steve Schulman, who I think also, he may teach up here as well on pro bono. I met with him about our 2015 objectives, and the one new one in his list of objectives is the internationalization of our pro bono efforts. So I think there's going to be more time spent on pro bono in the offices outside of the United States, and so I would expect that there's likely to be an increase in the amount of work that we do for countries and other issues that have more kind of sovereign aspects to them.
I should have asked you to say your name. Yes. So I read that 70% of your lawyers do pro bono work.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
We have, look, the American lawyer has driven a lot of this, but at our firm, and I think at many firms, you should all feel, for those of you that care about this, firms are deeply committed to doing this. There is, at least at our firm, a very strong sense of not just giving back, but that this is part of the expectation of you as a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone embraces that. We want all of our lawyers to do pro bono. That's why we were early in making Steve, have him come in as a partner, so he had the authority to kind of really change our culture, make it available to transactional lawyers as well as litigators. So we do work for KIPP schools. We do all kinds of stuff that give a large number of people the opportunity to do pro bono.
That's great. So please, and just say your name.
Charles McDonald, number 1L. And as we're starting to try to figure out what we take once we actually get choices, I was wondering if you had any advice on how to take the best advantage of the next 2 years as we start figuring out our differentiation and preparing ourselves for your firm or others.
Yeah, and I think somebody did a study on this.
Our faculty did a study,
right,
yes.
I read this, look, there's no, I would pick those things that seem most interesting to you. I think ultimately you're going to get an incredible education here. When you get your first case or work on your first deal, it's all going to seem pretty foreign. I don't know that there's that much that you can plan on other than developing some passions and things that really you feel like there's the potential you may connect on that. So pick stuff that sounds good and you're going to learn a lot in, and that gives you a pretty wide array of choices.
So that is my advice as well, and I do talk to people all over the world about this, and I would say that people divide into two groups: those who say you should view your legal education in a liberal arts kind of way, take what you're interested in, be passionate about it, think hard, expose yourself to different ways of thinking. But then there's another group that tends to say, if you're going to work in a law firm, you need to know something about business. You need to know something about how you read a balance sheet, how to understand what's the value proposition of a deal. You should read the Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
It's more important than any particular courses. That's what I've heard.
I amend a bit because now I'm thinking in capacity 3. What did I tell my daughter? And I told her, take securities regulation. I mean, make sure, if there is some opportunity to understand a financial statement, you will just feel, you will not enjoy it, but you will feel less anxious in the first case or deal you work on. So I think some financial underpinning of what you know going into this, it'll just put you a bit more at ease. So that's a good caveat.
So we do have faculty who ran a survey of top firms and summarized what they learned, and you can see the results. What we did in response here is we now provide many different forms in which people can learn some of this business background, including a boot camp on accounting. In case you don't want to take a whole class, you can do it over a couple of weekends.
Great.
And also something that's more intensive. So analytical methods is a good example. So taking a little bit of microeconomics, a little bit of decision theory, those can be useful for people who want to do pro bono as well. I can say, as someone who sits on a bunch of pro bono boards, boy, very helpful to know something about budgeting and accounting. Yes.
Hi, my name is Dejan Nguero. I'm also 1L here at the law school. A lot of the same, I think, pushback in terms of clients wanting certain fee arrangements, and actually some companies saw increased margins and profits by doing fixed fee and or value-based deals. So I'm wondering if the law firm and perhaps your firm, the law firm industry or your firm, are looking at models outside of law, or if there are particular goals that you all are working towards to kind of solve that tension between clients and then professional service providers when it comes to fee arrangements.
Yeah, definitely looking at the maximum amount of input to figure out how to get this right. I mean, we have now hired whatever we call it, chief analytics and pricing officer, something catchy like that. But he comes at, his background is in law firms, but he was also a management consultant. And figuring out, I think we're at kind of phase 2 of this. The first was, let's gather the information and figure out that an IPO costs X, or that this amount of work in a litigation. Then figuring out how to manage to that is the next step. So you can increase your margins if you are successfully figuring out, is it good on this litigation that we have 3 partners? Do we need 3 partners on this?
Right.
If we had 1 partner and we then had 3 first through 4th year associates, for some of this work we probably don't need the partner. And in the past you weren't driven to make those kinds of decisions. Now you are.
It's so interesting. I can say, having both for the school and my own home, recently worked on removing snow from roofs. And you talk to people, and they can spec. They can do an analysis based on all of their experience and what they've done. And it's not by the hour. And it's clearly architects do this, and engineers do this, and people in other professions do it. So it's new for lawyers, but lawyers are beginning to do it. And I think very much learning from what other professions have done.
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a 3L. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the changing role of counsels, and is the model changing that it's not so much anymore up or out, and that there's room to stay, but not necessarily be partner?
Yeah, so different firms have different models on this. This is something that we, as a firm, we've consistently had what we call senior counsel, which is a category for, it encompasses a range of people, some people coming out of government who for a period of time are in that role, some people who are not partners but are possessed of great expertise, great ability to mentor others. I think in general, it is, when I was growing up, so to speak, there was much more of an up or out philosophy. I think many, many firms have softened that line and seen the benefit of people continuing on in a meaningful role. I think it presents some challenges, candidly, because I want to make sure that our associates are all getting the best opportunities. If everybody stays on as a 10th, 11th, 12th year, how do you make sure that the third years who are ready to go and take a deposition are getting those opportunities? So there's a balancing, and we focused on making sure that there's a clear role for someone if they're going to continue, or coming out of government, that there's clarity about what the person would be doing. Generally, I think it's a more well-established position now in large law firms.
Hi, my name is Bakhtir. I'm an LLM student, and my question is related to the way the legal profession is organized in the United States. Some countries where legal profession was organized similarly historically have moved from the model where legal or like providers of legal services are professionally owned to the public ownership, like in Australia and in UK to a certain extent. Do you think that this is something that is going to happen in the United States? And if yes or no, why?
Right.
Why?
This is just one of those issues. As long as I have been practicing, there are a few of them. Are accountants going to take over and become, they're going to become law firm and accounting firms? Is there going to be public ownership of law firms? I think, it probably won't be in my lifetime. I think there will be some changes in this, whether it is actual public ownership or whether there's much more of what you're already seeing in terms of affiliated entities with law firms that are separate. They're not all lawyers. They have different abilities in terms of their ownership interests. I think this is going to change. I don't have the imagination at this moment to see a U.S. law firm going public. But when you think in terms of the investment in technology, I mean, some of the things that could really drive the need for
Capitalization.
If it really gets to the cost of big data is such, and that you can't do this, even, we're all dealing with very significant amounts of revenue, but it could be that it could just not be manageable in terms of capitalization. And then you would see this going in a different direction. It's just been a really long time that this is talked about with nothing happening here, so I don't see it on the immediate horizon.
So there are at least two, maybe three issues there. One is the need for upfront investment, which is true for tech, but also litigation increasingly,
right.
Investigation. A second is multiple expertise outside of law, so many IP firms that are affiliating with engineers and others. And then maybe there's a third, which is the governance versus finance. So law firms have always combined them. The governance and finance are all the same, but we're seeing in other parts of the world that they're becoming disaggregated. And so it'll be interesting to watch.
Look at the UK, it's not that different a world, system. And the world did not come to an end when they started doing this. So I think we have interesting times ahead.
So we might see some pluralization within countries. So let me ask why diversity matters to you, your firm, your clients?
So I'm going to start with kind of the most practical answer, and that is that clients are insisting that you not present 6 white men every time you go to the client, because that is not what they look like. They don't think that it gives them a good range of viewpoints. They don't think that it creates the right kind of collaborative, teamwork-oriented approach. So if you didn't believe in anything other than meeting your client's needs, you would want to make sure that diversity mattered. I am fortunate that I am at a law firm that is not the main argument that we use, and that we look at it much more in terms of, I think, where I would want to be practicing law, who I would want to be practicing law with, the variety of viewpoints, backgrounds, experiences that people have had, I think all make a significant difference in your experience, in the advice that you give. And to me, it just has always made, why would you not want that to be the model?
Right.
And I mean, maybe that's because I'm a girl, but it just never struck me as it never made sense to me why this would not be what everybody would think was important and valuable.
Are there special issues in terms of mentoring for women,
Yeah.
for people of color?
Yes, it's hard, but I remember when I got old enough to be a mentor as opposed to a mentee. I think after I had my first kid and we had voluntary mentoring, 17 people signed up for me to be their mentor. Not because I was great, but because they wanted to talk to someone who had actually had a child and practiced law. That's not, I can't do that for 17 people. That's not going to be effective.
Right.
So I think just figuring out ways to offer the right support, helpful support, and not have the burden just expect
The
that
same
two
few
people. I mean, I've had
yeah.
the same thing with my diverse colleagues. I mean, you can't expect me. I can't be the mentor to everybody in this law firm.
Right.
And figuring out how to extend that beyond just the people who care most and are diverse, that's the challenge.
Yes. How about collaboration? Is this something that you can teach? Is this something you actually give people feedback on? What is it to be a team member? We now require every first-year student to take a class that has team involvement, and I can tell you students don't exactly like it. I think people remember being in the 5th grade group project and having to do the work and not wanting to be in that role again. But my perception is this is really important.
I totally agree. I'm surprised actually that people are not liking it, just because all of your colleagues in the MBA world have been doing this for so long that, to me, it just exists as part of what graduate education, I am assuming, is like now. Even my younger one is a senior at WashU. I mean, all she ever seems to be doing is group projects. I wonder if there is ever any moment where you are evaluated on your own performance. Maybe that's because she's going into social work, but so you need to be able to work as a team. You absolutely will find that to be a hugely important skill in being at a law firm, being at a public interest organization, being in the government. There is not a lot that is left to do on your own anymore. So having the right skills to be able to figure out how to move a team forward is important. I assume the issues are that some people do more work and some people do less work, and then you're graded together. The deal is, in a non-academic environment, those issues will exist. I think they're probably more easily identified. If someone is not pulling their weight, I think it will be more obvious. Everybody, in an academic environment has some sensitivity. I have learned from my daughter in outing the non-participatory people. But I think you can expect that is going to be part of what we want you to be able to do as lawyers at the law firm. And I would teach it, I would practice it, I would find ways in which you can work together that you find comfortable, and then you ought to bring to whatever organization you're going to, your best game in taking projects and figuring out how to do them together, because that's what the clients want to see, and that's what the lawyers you're working with are going to want to feel is happening.
I should say some people love it, and some people say, this is a breath of fresh air. Why don't we do this in all the classes? Do you give specific feedback? Is it part of promotion decisions?
Yeah, we have a core competency program, and teamwork is one of the 4 drivers of success, and then we have indicia of you being successful at teamwork and collaboration. as part of what you are supposed to be demonstrating to advance to the next level.
All right. Anyone have a last question? Then I will break, and anyone who has
Thank you.
informal questions, come up and discuss it. Thanks for being here.
so
Thank you so much.